Welcome into the much anticipated spring trend webinar here at Cambria. We have launched our spring edition. We have three fabulous designers that are going to be joining us today. My name is Heather. I'm the spokesperson for Cambria, and we are so excited to have you join us. I'm going to start with just a little bit of housekeeping. And I know a lot of you are familiar with webinars and Zoom and how all of these things work, but make sure that you feel free to submit your questions in the question and answer box, because we do have Head of Design Summer Cath waiting in the wings, and she's going to be able to answer those questions and interact with you live while we're out here filming this webinar. We're also going to have a few little fun pop-ups as polls. We would love to hear from you. You guys are why we do this. So make sure that you're answering and you're engaging with some of those little pop-ups. And if you're watching this as a playback and you didn't catch it live, I want to remind you that you're going to be able to see all of this at CambriaUSA.com/style. Make sure that you also go on and you subscribe at Cambria's YouTube channel. So without further ado, I had a chance to introduce myself. My name is Heather. I am the Cambria spokesperson. But let me introduce the key players and some of our key featured designers that are in our spring trend edition. I'm going to start with Jean Stoffer, who is a name that so many of us are familiar with. She is coming to us from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Need the glasses on this one. She's known for her elegant and approachable design. She's been featured on her television show, The Established Home, on the Magnolia Network, and in her book, Establishing Home. Jean, I know that you are not new to Cambria Style, but welcome into the webinar. I'm excited to work with you today. And Jean, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to start by asking, in a few words, how would you describe your design aesthetic?
Thanks, Heather. So great to be here. I would describe my aesthetic as timeless, livable, with a modern twist.
Sounds absolutely perfect. Thank you, Jean, for being here. I'm really excited. Next, we're going to meet our friend Ethan Greenfeld. And yesterday we had the most amazing conversation. You're going to love Ethan. He's the principal designer at Ethan Charles Design, a boutique design studio located in Woodland Hills, California. Ethan's design signature has been described as modern, comfortable, and inspired, a little lived in. Ethan, welcome into your first webinar with Cambria. How would you describe your design aesthetic?
Organic, casual, and also livable.
Love the livable part. The features that you have in this edition too are lovely. So I'm excited to get into that. And then last but certainly not least, we have Jean Liu, who is joining us. Jean is a principal designer in Dallas, Texas, based out of Jean Liu Designs, where she prides herself on creating modern, edited, comfortable, and inspired spaces. She's quite a snacker. If you find her website, you're going to see something about peanut butter pretzels. Jean, we've got some exciting news coming from you today. But before that, how would you describe your design aesthetic?
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Like Jean and Ethan would say that our design philosophy and approach has always been modern yet approachable. We do love focusing a lot on art and artwork throughout a client's house. And I think deeply personal would be another adjective for us.
I think that every way that you've all described yourselves is exactly what we're going to see in this spring edition of Cambria Style. So let's open the pages. Let's get started. And one more quick reminder, you have an opportunity to ask questions. Summer Cath, Head of Design, is going to be engaging. So if there's questions you want, any information you want, make sure that you pop in and you answer or ask any of those questions. Okay, Ethan. We're going to start with you. And I think the first thing that jumps out to us in this beautiful design, number one, we're looking at Irons Bridge, but the center island in this piece has this big, bold design to it. And I want to talk a little bit about the fabricating that you did. Ethan, tell us about this design.
So it is an 8-piece island. So every piece that you see is completely separate. It was a fairly tedious process of them just getting it together, just because everything really did have to be cut so precisely to ensure that, we weren't going to have any visible seams or anything like that. And that's the end result we were really, really happy with.
It is so cool, Ethan. How in the world did you think of that fascinating design of like the beveled knee hole area?
So I genuinely don't know. I would love to give you like a full reason as to like some creative thing that I did, but it really was just, we wanted to do something different. I wasn't really sure what that was going to be, and I didn't necessarily want just like a waterfall island. I didn't feel like that was different enough. And so I think I was just sitting around thinking of different shapes that would fit the space and kind of came up with this and then figured out how to draw it out to give it to our fabricator and was kind of just like, can you like do this? I have no idea how to tell you how to do it, but can you do it? And I was lucky enough that he said, yeah, we'll do it. And here we are.
So
So,
cool.
Ethan, I've got a question for you. In a lot of our projects, our clients are fairly obsessed with storage. It doesn't matter how many people live in the house, how much storage they may have, they always want more. And so my question is, did your clients balk, or did they need to be convinced to do this really cool detail, or were they okay giving up additional cabinets and under the island?
So they were actually totally, so they're empty nesters and
Okay.
they were totally fine giving up the additional storage. What you don't see in the pictures is there are actually additional cabinetry on the sides, and then the pantry was a pretty decent size for just the two of them. So they didn't really bat an eyelash at getting rid of the storage on the back side of the island.
That's great.
Ethan,
Such a
we're seeing
cool
right now,
design.
because I think we're on the other side of the island, and the incorporation of the little surprise pop of color. What made you go with that shade of green? And then how did you decide to incorporate that green with Irons Bridge?
Well, Iron's Bridge, the beauty of it, and honestly, in most of the stones that we choose we try and go for something that's either really, really bold or completely neutral or both. So it's just easier to incorporate everything, and it is a more timeless look when you go with less color on hard surfaces like that because they're not an easy change. And I knew I didn't want the island to match the perimeter cabinets, so I was deciding what colors I really wanted to, see in the space and that would work with everything we had going on. And green just seemed like the obvious answer, and I really do love the color green. I kind of consider it a neutral. And it kind of worked itself out. I didn't want a light green for this particular space. I felt like with an island like that going to the opposite end, we needed something a little bit deeper in color just to kind of hold its own.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I mean, green in my world, Ethan, for what it's worth, is totally a neutral. So
Yeah.
we use it a lot in all different shades. So
Yeah, it's true. I can't even think of a color it doesn't look good with.
right.
Right.
And it transcends seasons and even it transcends styles. I think it's such a great color. And lots of shades work too, I feel
Yeah.
like.
Totally.
And you know what was interesting about this edition is I know that it wasn't planned, but each of you ended up designing with a different shade of green. And yesterday, we were visiting a little bit before this webinar and talking about how it is Mother Nature's neutral. So as you're watching along, I want you to watch as each designer goes through their feature in Cambria Style, because all of them chose a shade of green. And I thought that was really interesting with so many colors out there to know that three key people come back to that same thing is really, really, I don't know, fun. As a person who's going to try to do it on their own at some point, it kind of gives me peace of mind knowing that a shade of green is going to work as a neutral. I want to go in to something that was in a very innovation vein with one of Ethan's design, because he also did this design, and there's a lot to go through with this feature. Ethan, if you don't mind, I want to start with number one, your choice of Inverness Platinum. Do you want to describe Inverness Platinum a little bit? And then what was your reaction and what was your client's reaction to that design?
So it's like a debossed stone, so it's not completely flat, which honestly is something that like I hadn't really seen for any type of stone like at all. So when we originally saw it and we got our sample of it, it was just like a really cool surprise because we weren't like super aware of that. And honestly, this is a second home for our clients, so they weren't as concerned with any type of textured counter, but they also actually found the texture to be really, really cool and different. So, And again, it was a neutral stone, so it went perfectly with everything.
So is it like it's a suede or leathered kind of finish, like they would say in natural stone world?
So it's like a honed finish, and then like the veining itself is like, I don't know like fully how to describe it, but it's literally like if you think of like embossed leather, like it's kind of like that, like where
Ah,
it's not perfectly flat, and then the veins themselves are also like a matte finish. So it's not, if you run your hand over it, like you'll get like ridges from
you
the,
can feel the texture of the
Oh,
vein then. Oh,
yeah.
cool. But
we need
Ethan,
a sample of that.
yeah, but the side panel you made out of the same material, and then you had your fabricators kerf it, bevel it, make it a beadboard. That is so cool.
Yeah, they're all V grooves. So again, I wanted something textured on the island. I think we can all agree how much we love texture. And again, like it felt like seeing that would just add a whole nother element. So it was a really interesting thought process, and I was really, really happy that they were able to execute it. I do I always say that one of these days my fabricator is gonna like throw me off of a balcony or something for all of these crazy things that I keep asking them to do.
Or he might say, because of Ethan, we get
Right.
to do these cool things.
Right.
No
Now,
kidding.
Ethan, was this something that your fabricator was doing on site, or did he bring it to the client's job site already with these grooves ready to install it?
So
'Cause-
they had to do this at the shop. I don't remember the actual technique that they used for it. So the side pieces, or I guess the waterfall pieces, they were brought when they brought the rest of the fabricated counters to install, and then they just had to make some simple adjustments and cuts to ensure that they were completely even and level on each side.
Pretty cool.
Very cool.
It's phenomenal. What was your client's reaction to feeling the texture of the Inverness? And I know that Ethan mentioned a finish work. I think we do the best matte finish in the business. And for anybody that's new to that finish with us, it does not change the performance at all. So it's still completely maintenance free. But Ethan, when your client looked at the samples for the first time and they touched it and they felt that veining, what was their reaction?
Um, Honestly, they just said that it was really cool. Like that was
Mhm.
literally their only reaction. They didn't comment on anything else. They just thought it was really interesting. And in their current house, we have quartz counters in there, but they don't have a texture. So they thought it was unexpected and really interesting.
Did you
I think
use
it's fabulous.
did you use that same finish on the wall slabs too, or did you go to just the matte on the wall slabs?
I did it's exactly the same on the walls as well. Yeah, so the whole kitchen was essentially clad in this exact stone.
Hmm. Very cool. Wow.
It is. It's so unique and it's so different. And I can feel, when you're talking about that finish, everything in this space just feels calm and
Hmm.
muted. And there's this bold movement, but it feels like such a gorgeous, comfortable space. And I don't know how your fabricator feels about it, Ethan, but the work paid off. We think it's stunning. So kudos, congratulations on your feature. We really, really love it. I also want to remind everybody that Summer Kath is present. So if you have comments, if you have questions, she is going to be reacting. Summer Kath, head of design. You can go ahead and log in and drop a little question. All right, Ethan, we're going to move on and we're going to start to visit and we're going to deliver some big news. Next, we're going to go to Jean Liu's project where we see another gorgeous shade of green. But Jean, before we even get into your featuring Cambria style, can you tell everybody the big news that you just received?
Oh, you're very kind, Heather. I am really, really excited to share that one of our projects, which happens to be my own tiny pied-à-terre in New York, happens to be on the cover of Elle Decor this month. It is an absolute dream come true because, to be really honest, it was sort of a construction nightmare. And every single day we were totally uncertain that we would actually be done in time for the actual photo shoot. But it was a labor of love, and I am so excited to be able to talk about it here, and to see the photos is really a career highlight.
Congratulations, Jean.
Yeah.
It's
I jokingly
huge.
tell people it's all downhill from here. Anyway,
Oh, okay. So big round of applause on that. That
thank
is
you.
fabulous.
Thank you.
Now we're going to dive in to the design. Let's start by telling whose home this is, and then a little bit of the backstory behind the timeline, the colors, all of it. Jean, I'm just going to toss it to you, and you can give us the backstory on this beautiful space.
Thank you.
Mhm.
This is a kitchen for a friend and celebrity, Jenna Ushkowitz. Some of you may have watched the TV show Glee. She plays Tina. And so this is the home of her and her husband. This is their first home together. So that's what really made it special. So she reached out to me and we started talking about this project. I never saw it in person and you know, for months, but we talked about it, went over the floor plans, discussed the inspiration. And so when we finally did meet in LA together, she dropped this news on me that she was pregnant and that we needed to finish the entire renovation of the house. Mind you, we hadn't even started within, I would say, 4 or 5 months. It was I was happy for her, but I was really stressed out for myself because that had never been discussed, and the amount of work that she wanted to do in that time frame was certainly a challenging design goal. I will say that it did teach us to pivot, if you will. So a lot of the things that we thought we were going to do, we needed to come back and rethink and try to go with options that were immediately available or had shorter lead times. And this is where I'm so grateful for a brand like Cambria, because it was no problem at all getting our counters and materials in no time.
Wow, such a pretty color. Is this your inspiration, Jean, or was this something that your client had an idea
That's a
about?
great question. I jokingly tell people that Jenna always came to any conversation or any meetings on site really prepared, and she was really consistent in the message that she had for us too, which was she wanted a green kitchen. Every image, every conversation involved this sort of lighter, softer, paler green, and this ended up being sort of an apple green color by Farrow and Ball. And we love the way it feels. It really feels representative to me of her family life and just how
So
bright
pretty.
and natural the house gets in terms of natural light.
Yeah,
And look what you did with the hardware. You mixed the metals from
Thank
the
you.
uppers to the lowers. So cool.
So we are not design or trying to set design trends, but you know, we thought it would be sort of fun to just play with what was going on in this kitchen, not take it so seriously. And she was game for it. So as you can see, the lower cabinets all have a matte black hardware detail, and all of the uppers have this satin brass ring pull, if you will. And we thought, why not? It's just a little tongue-in-cheek fun detail.
it's so pretty. And what are the
Thank you.
floors? Because I love them.
So this floor is a mosaic tile. It's meant to look like a Kaleem rug when it's installed. And it was really fun to do, and she was game for it. And I think that what's really nice about this floor for us is it was really the beginning of trying to weave in a black thread into the rest of this kitchen. So that's where you see the black plumbing and the finish on the hardware for the lower cabinets as well.
It's gorgeous.
Thank
I
you.
have
Really
one quick
pretty.
question before we go on to the next page. Jean, what drove choosing Swan Bridge? Like, did you choose the stone or the cabinet color first? And then how did you pair them up?
I think that it was actually a material selection that happened simultaneously because we were presenting schemes with paint colors and stone at the same time. But Swansbridge was a natural selection because it does show a little bit of veining, but it's not too in your face. And obviously the performance aspect of Cambria was something that she wanted from the very get-go. Let me remind you guys, now has a very young child. So lots of spills and lots of activities happening in and around this kitchen.
Fabulous. Okay, let's go to the next space because we're going to get into this next space. And we loved everything about this. And I know we've received quite a bit of feedback from people saying what they love the most is that there is a dining room that
Oh,
is
yeah.
specific to the space. So are we going to see a return of that kind of more specific rooms? Are we going to get back into that dining room?
You know, I think as a designer, we always love a good dining room opportunity just because it's such an occasion to do something pretty and really custom. But I don't know if we'll see the return of actual dining rooms. I do think that in our own work, we are seeing a return to more traditional floor plans and not as many open floor concepts where your kitchen leads right onto your eating area, whether that's dining or breakfast nook. So in this particular project, this was a bungalow, and we were trying to maintain the integrity of the architecture. And so it had a separate dining area that we just worked with and are really happy with.
Jean, is if your cameraman is right here, is his back to the kitchen in the
That's
shot?
correct, yes. So Jean, so actually what you don't see in this picture is that the kitchen opens right onto this dining room. And I will say for someone like Jenna, I feel like she kind of got the best of both worlds. There used to be a wall that really did delineate kitchen from this eating area. But in order to maximize storage and to give her better circulation, we did remove that wall. And
Mm.
so it feels like it's a little bit more open, but you're not really right on top of each other in the same space. So
That's really nice.
thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, let's go to the
Love it.
next one because we're going to get into some of the lighting. And as we pivot into this next space, we've now moved from the dining room into this just soft luxury living space. I want to focus on the windows. Are they
Okay,
original?
yeah. Yes, in fact, they are. I would say that when we walked the house for the first time, so much of it needed some kind of renovation, but these windows were one of the features we were adamant about trying to keep. And, you know, luckily for us, Jenna was on board. And I will also say that we are pretty adamant about trying to incorporate window treatments, not just for the function, but sometimes because it softens a room or gives it additional personality. But these leaded windows were so great. They didn't need any additional TLC. We just wanted them to sing the way that you see them today.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh, I absolutely love how you brought this classic architecture from, you said it was like the 20s or something, or
Yes,
this
the
is an older
2030s
home.
bungalow in LA. So
Yeah, but then bringing in this modern furniture, you kept the cove ceiling that was plastered in. It's so
thank
pretty.
you. Yes, we had a lot of fun doing this. And, you know, one of the things I'll just note from the furnishing standpoint is when she gave us this truncated timeline, we definitely had to rethink where we were getting pieces of furniture and how long lead times were going to take. So this was all pulled together in a relatively short amount of time.
It's beautiful.
When there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
Ethan, what are your thoughts on the windows and just the space and how it all pulled together?
I mean, I love the windows personally. I love like the juxtaposition between like the classic architecture and windows with like the more contemporary furnishings. I love that. I did want to ask, seeing as she was going to have a baby, were all of the fabrics that you chose, were they all performance fabrics so that you were kind of keeping in line with that low maintenance trend from like the kitchen into the living spaces?
That's a really good question. We did have that conversation, and when possible, we were trying to work in performance fabrics. But I will tell you, due to the timeline, we ended up going with a lot of things that were just easily in stock or already upholstered the way that you see them. So that was the only thing that I might have gone back and tried to push more had we had more time. So.
Mhm.
And if you guys missed it at the top, before Jean started to describe this project, it was done with a celebrity friend, and then she found out it has to be done in 4 months. So it's remarkable what just happened. And I think so many designers are watching this right now and going, oh my gosh, please don't let people know that that's possible, because it came together so beautifully. Before we move on to Jean Stoffer, I do want to ask one more question about this overall aesthetic, because, and I'd love to hear from all three designers. This is our spring edition. We talk about a lot of the trends, and I see a lot of the trends in this room that we saw at KBIS this year,
Okay.
where it's the curve, it's the movement, it's the warm woods, it's the softness. Are all of you seeing those trends consistently?
I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do a lot of
Yeah.
things that are rounded corners, rounded shapes, undulating shapes. So
I would say for me, it's not so much the shapes that we're using that way, just because we tend to so much stick to classic designs, but it's definitely richer colors.
Mm.
And like we were talking about earlier, more textures.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you. I think that we're definitely seeing, especially now, like a lot more curvature and everything, but colors are where I think we're out of the age of the cool tone colors and very much into the age of very warm tone colors, which I'm personally loving.
Mhm.
Well, we can all tell you, if I'm not moderating this webinar, I would certainly never miss one, because this feels like a one-on-one FaceTime with three of the nation's leading designers, and you guys are like giving all the best tips. So thank you. This has been so much fun already. We're going to move into Jean Stoffer's feature. And as we go, we're going to go from the West Coast to the Midwest. And this is her very own Bradbury Cafe located inside of the Stoffer home. And keep in mind, Summer Kath, head of design, is here. She's live. If you have questions, you go ahead and type. She's going to be able to respond to you. She's not going to be featured in the webinar. Everyone deserves a vacation. So Summer, I hope you're enjoying yours, but she is available to answer any questions. So you guys make sure that you're doing some comments. Jean Stoffer, European Cafe vibe, beginning to end. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, this is so fun. This is inside our store in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And my son Daniel had this idea that it would make the store feel so cozy and get a real kind of vibe if we were to have a European styled cafe inside of it. And so we went about trying to figure that out. And the clinching moment happened when I found this set of antique doors, leaded glass doors that you see in the foreground on the left side. It was taken from a Parisian apartment, and we made a glass wall that separated the cafe from the rest of the store, and then brought in this antique, it used to be a communion table from a church in Chicago that was being remodeled. And we put the Cambria Smithfield on top to be our coffee bar. And the whole thing just has this dark European kind of crowded vibe to it, and I just love it.
It's
I think those doors are so cool. Did you ever have a moment where I mean, had you not found the doors, you think this would have been something that didn't come to be, or you'd have just found a different way around it?
Yeah, honestly, Jean, I couldn't figure out how to make it happen in an effective way until I saw the doors. And then it was like, that's it. You kind of like you need something to get you over for me, this was a big hurdle, and that was it for me.
It brings such great architectural detail to this space. I would have thought they were always there. I didn't, until we started talking about it, didn't know that you brought them in and to create this cafe.
Yeah, they're absolutely gorgeous. Did you just stumble upon them, or did you kind of have an idea that like that's what you wanted doors to look like?
No, we've been dealing with an importer of Parisian antiques or French antiques for a while, and so we get emails periodically, and we were sitting around the table discussing this whole concept of the cafe, and then this email came in where these doors were in it, and I was like, wait, that's it. So I bought them right there. It was very exciting. And then thinking about what else would make this space feel more cozy and European, we came up with this really dark green color that we now call Bradbury green, and have added it even to one of the offerings in our cabinetry line. But it's just this, like we were talking about earlier, how green is such a fabulous neutral, all shades of it. And this one is really, really dark. It almost looks black sometimes.
How have your clients responded to that Bradbury green?
It is the most requested thing in my DMs
Oh my gosh,
Wow.
that's
by
amazing.
multiples. Yeah.
That's so exciting.
I thousands of requests for what this color is, but we formulated it. And so I just say it's a really dark green.
I can smell the coffee beans. Like when I look at this space, and Jean, you were mentioning too, when you go to enter the space, like you almost have to turn to the side and kind of shimmy. You wanted things to feel very purposefully like warm and brought together, right?
Yeah, and crowded, and there's the noise of the clinking coffee cups and the steam of the machine, and it's just a really awesome sensory experience.
This is amazing. All right, we're going to move on to the next. I also want to remind everyone, I have questions that are already coming in, so I've got like 4 or 5 of them. We are going to have time for question and answers at the end of this, and Summer Kath, head of design, is available. So if you start popping up your questions right now, she can correspond with you. But there are a few that I definitely want everybody to stay till the end, because so many people were sending Instagram messages asking questions early, and there's about 5 of them, and I think you're going to be interested in the answers. So, Jean, we're going to go into this next space, and this is one that I know feels super personal. There's this real family connection to this space. Tell us about the design, and then tell us who is involved.
Yes, this design actually is from several years ago. It was the very first project that my daughter Grace and I did together. And it's something that whenever I see it, I just smile, because I think about what has happened in our relationship since then and in our business, and that this was one of the big catalysts for it. And this was a neighbor who invited us to help us with their design, whose request was for a deep blue kitchen, but that had a little bit of zest to it. So it was such a special project in an old 1930s Dutch colonial home, but it just brought together just a design full of life, and for their family and really for mine too. There's a really cool feature on. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jean.
Jean, I was going to say, I think I've seen this part of this kitchen on your Instagram, and I think there's this cool feature over on the back range wall, and I was wondering if you would kind of talk me through how that all came about, because just looking at it, I have a feeling it took a lot of coordination and forethought.
Yes, Jean. Well, this is very interesting because you can maybe see the vertical lines in the backsplash below the range hood. And that is that there are sliding panels behind on the back wall of the range that reveal spice shelves. And the actual shelves are to the right and left of the range, and the slabs slide behind the range, behind the big slab in the middle. And it was a very fun design that we came up with, but it created some other cool design opportunities because we had to thicken that whole wall. Since it was an exterior wall, and this is here in Michigan, we had to have insulation. We had to make that wall quite a bit thicker. So we made the window, like the window jambs are quite thick, and the countertop goes all the way in as window sills. So there's just some really cool features of this.
I actually have a question about your island. And that's like, is that walnut on the side? And like, what was the thought process behind that? Because I love that.
Yes. Well, some of you know I don't love seeing seams and islands. And if I do, I like doing something unique with them. So we were able to use a full slab here without any seams in it, but we needed to have something to add to it because we were beyond the super slab dimension. So I thought it would be really cool to do 2 different waterfall ends, but out of 2 different materials. So Cambria on the long, most major end, and then a walnut butcher block on the other. And it's, you see, it's a little thicker. So it has some place, the Cambria has something place to dye into. So there's not a flush seam, which is always a little difficult to maintain.
I have a question, Jean. It's Britannica is the design. What made you go with Britannica? And when you're using a color like this, because it's kind of it's a bold, I think you called it, what word did you use a moment ago? Vivid? Maybe a vivid blue?
Have a little zest.
Yes, right. Zesty. Zesty was the word you used. Is zesty blue.
Yeah.
So when you're going with something like that, how do you determine how much movement you want in your stone?
Well, this particular stone just caught our client's eye. We took them to the gallery with us. And when they saw this, and mind you, this is now 7 years ago, and I think it still looks amazing. But they saw it and just thought they loved it. And so it was just a given that this is what they would use throughout. They loved the vein, they loved the color. And I thought it was a really great compliment to the blue cabinetry.
Beautiful.
Britannica has consistently been one of our top selling designs. I'd love to hear from the other 2 designers as well. Jean and Ethan, are you still seeing a lot of requests for Britannica? We really expanded that collection.
I personally we're actually using it in a project right now. So yeah, I am.
I still think that Britannica always ends up in our top 2, top 3 of what we're presenting. And I think the way that Britannica either ends up getting used or cut really boils down to the size of the kitchen and what the scale of that vein does for each kitchen or room that we're working with it in. So
that's a really good point, Jean. Scale of the pieces that you're using.
yes.
Larger pieces look so good with the Britannica.
Because it's sort of sad when you can't use it in a enough of a surface area to really appreciate all of that veining.
I have to tell you guys, I have to keep reminding myself that I'm working because you're giving so many great design nuggets. I kind of want to start writing, okay, large scale, larger spaces. Let's go into Jean's final picture that was featured. And Jean, as we get into this space, I want to talk about how you unified both of these areas because you've got some leather, you have some warmth, you've got some bright pops of color. Tell me about the lighting and the accessories and the colors and how it all came together.
Well, I love this image because I feel like it exemplifies a lot of what we try to do in design is bring together classic forms like the beams and like this Chesterfield sofa with more modern design like the angled chairs on the left and the big banded lantern above the coffee table. I think, I love bringing in art that has the most pattern and color because it can be very unique to the person and not so permanent. So it's a great thing to switch out. But I love like the lanterns over the island on the left were designed by Suzanne Kessler, but designed after something that an antique light fixture she found in France. And I just love, you can see that generally speaking, the furnishings are very neutral and the pops of color are all in things that are accessories, really. We love designing like that.
Same. I also think that for our design clients, we always tell them, buy really good quality staples and make it so that unless they just are totally set on it, more neutral in color and let the throw pillows and the accessories be where they really can scratch that itch if they're really wanting to follow a trend or they've just got this kick, or if they're on a particular color kick. And then that way, if they ever grow tired of it, it's really not that challenging to swap out or go on to their next color obsession.
Totally. I think neutrals are just a more timeless look in general. And like Jean said, like it's just so much easier to change out the smaller items than it is to just like reinvest in these like larger pieces, because they are an investment piece. And most people don't want to invest in something that they are going to end up changing out after like a year or two because they get sick of the color.
So true. Yeah.
Well, as long as we're talking about neutrals, I know asking you to choose a favorite design is like choosing a favorite child. But if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to hear each of you respond to, if you're looking for a beautiful, easy neutral from Cambria, which neutral would you choose if you can only pick one? And I'm going to start with you, Ethan.
Either the Irons Bridge or the Britannica Warm, I believe it is.
Okay, and why those two?
Irons Bridge it's got a lot of movement, but it's very subtle movement, which I really appreciate. And it's very neutral. And Britannica Warm, because it's got much bolder movement, but it's more of like a taupe, which I prefer taupe to like a gray. So it would depend on this, like Jean said earlier, the scale of the kitchen. And then also just like the overall aesthetic. Are we trying to go more bold on the counters and make that more of a statement, or are we trying to kind of accentuate some of the other things going on?
Perfect. Jean Liu, can I go to you next?
Sure. I would say that you're seeing my favorite stone selection in these images, Swan's Bridge, because I think it has the most versatility for all of the projects that we seem to be working on. It's got a little bit of a vein. The color, there's just enough flecking and color in it that we seem to be able to make it work with a lot of different colors. And you know, we get to use it in large and small formats without really any concern for what's going on with the pattern.
Amazing. And Jean Stoffer, we'll wind down that question with you, and then we're going to get into about 4 or 5 other questions.
Okay, well, Ethan, I'm jumping on your train because I just discovered Irons Bridge, and we put it on a massive freestanding island that we're now going to be offering in our Stoffer Home standing piece collection. It is in my opinion, the perfect subtle color and pattern that is so versatile. I really think it could work in any decor, in any color palette. I just, the subtlety of the vein and also the coloration and the background color, the combination is so fantastic. And I think it can go modern. It can get an OG edge and look classic and traditional. I love it.
I think our research and development team is probably watching this right now and calling the facility and saying, hey, get ready for a run on Irons Bridge, because it is apparently a front runner. Okay, reading glasses are out. We've got lots of questions coming in. The questions we're going to work with today, I'll have all 3 of the designers answer. But keep in mind, we do have Summer Kath, head of design, who is live right now as part of this broadcast. And if you want to ask questions, pop them into the comment section, and she's going to be able to correspond with you as you're asking those questions. So from Keller Architects, the question is, what do you see? What do you all see as methods for lighting in an important space like the kitchen? Are we doing pendants? Are they going by the wayside or over the island? Let's talk about kitchen lighting. And we'll stick with the same order. I'll go Ethan first, and then I'll go Jean Liu, and then Jean Stoffer, just so we don't jump in on each other. Ethan, do you want to start?
I think that we are and kind of have always been seeing a mix of all of them. I think that pendants are never going to go out. I think over an island, they're never going to go out as long as they're in the right space. I think we're seeing a lot of sconces over windows to kind of create focal points there, on shelving and things like that. So I think it's kind of a combination of all of the above.
Jean Liu?
Not just lighting in a kitchen, but our approach to lighting a house in general is to treat it in layers and to have multiple layers. So I think pendants sconces. These are all great ways to make a kitchen feel like a special space, not just a utilitarian part of your house where food is prepared. But we also really rely on places like under cabinet lighting, backlighting on shelves to drive a lot of that function. And so together, I feel like it's not only a functional space, but it's a really pretty space. Because I said it earlier, I think kitchens have really become the heart of a household. We all spend a lot of time there, whether we're eating or not, or cooking or not.
Jean Stoffer?
Yeah, and the thing that I would add is that we generally speaking use as few recessed can lights as possible because manufacturers have come out with a whole new type of ceiling fixture that's a tiny flush mount. And we love incorporating those into our designs. And now they can be made out of alabaster and brass and all kinds of beautiful things where they're an actual little design feature themselves while providing really important overall light.
We're going to rewatch this over and over for all of these great design tips. Next question came to us from Lindsay Peterson. Question is, what color are you excited to start seeing in today's design trends? Ethan, I'll start with you again.
Again, warmer colors. I think we're gonna see a lot this year anyways. I think we're gonna start seeing a lot of browns and greens, and also I feel like the kind of rusty colors are coming back, but also like a goldenrod color. I personally love a goldenrod, so I feel like those are gonna be our heavy trends. Oh, and like an aubergine. I feel like that's another one that's coming.
You, Haley. Gorgeous design with some of the aubergine. Jean Liu.
I would echo Ethan's comment about brown. I do feel like brown's returning in a big way. Maybe more on the side of furniture, but not necessarily. Maybe some lacquered brown on cabinets and doors. And I think that in lieu of a creamy neutral, we're actually starting to dip our toe into more of taupes. There's a Pharaoh and Ball elephant's breath that we've started using a lot too. And equally like Swan Bridge, we feel like it's just such a workhorse because it goes well with so many things. It's just gives you just a little more depth than some of the neutral creamier whites that we've been using. So look out for that.
And Jean Stoffer?
Yeah, I agree, Jean, about taupe. I've always felt like I've seen this pendulum go from gray to brown, and I feel like taupe is such a perfect color because it kind of is that sweet spot right in the middle where it can have lasting power both no matter if gray is trending or brown is trending. And then I also feel like these colors, Ethan, that you were mentioning are so good because their tonal base is kind of like muddy, so it's not this clear kind of brash color. It's more of a toned brown, like a brown base to it, almost creating this rich just depth of color that is, I think, really, really interesting.
Fabulous. 2 questions left. This came to us from Hailoang, and she says, how do you inject your client's personality into each space? Ethan?
I think it depends on the space. I think a lot of clients over the years, they collect things from either travel or other things that I think we can all agree we try and incorporate in some manner just because it has some form of sentimental value. So I think that would be one. And then the other thing I think is just, through the process of design, like it's really, really personal. And we get to know our clients really well because like we are in their life and they are in our life on some projects for years. And we really we slowly got to know them and their family. And I think through that knowledge and like that kind of relationship that we build with them, we're able to kind of hone in on their personality and what would make sense for them. And then we just slowly incorporate that into the overall design.
Jean Liu?
A friend of mine once said, she's a fellow designer, one of our jobs as interior designers is to try and get into your client's head as quickly as possible. And to that end, I would say more concretely, we generally let clients drive a lot of the color conversation first, because I think that's for us the biggest way we can help them make their home appear the way or live the way that they want to. And then the second part is through these big, long conversations, the program of each room, how they live, how many kids do they have? Is it an active family with a lot of pets? So the program really drives all the material selections, the layouts. And so for me, that's how their personality shines through. And obviously you layer that with the things that hopefully they're bringing, whether it's artwork or accessories. And I would say even a collection of books for us from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And Jean?
Yeah, I think just additionally, we get to work on a lot of really great old homes. And so there's a certain personality of the home itself that the client, wanted when they purchased the home. And so it's nice for us to take cues from the home and from all of the questions that we ask in advance about how they want to use the home. But most of our clients are always asking to make sure that, okay, either dogs or kids are going to be here or both, and make sure it works for that. So that's a big, that's just been great for us, because that's a home.
Yeah.
It's not just a house. Then that's the home, and that's really fun.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting. These webinars are so fun because we very rarely will get behind the design like this. We don't usually get to hear about the client and what drove decisions and what were the challenges and the fabrication and installations. But one thing that has become evident through this webinar is each space that we featured in this issue did have some sort of a retro element to it, from the windows to the doors that you found, to like all of you were working with something that was intensely personal in each space. So I think that advice that you all gave was really great. This is our last question from the board. And remember, just because I'm done asking questions, Summer Kath, head of design, is here. You guys can continue to type in and ask questions. We're going to continue to go back to this and answer all of your questions. Final question is, what is the one element, accent, or material that you gravitate towards as a final enhancement or a finishing touch? Ethan, we'll start with you.
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like totally sure. I think it depends on the project and the client, to be completely honest. I don't think that it's necessarily like a one size fits all thing. What I will say from like a personal standpoint, and this is more just like the final thing that I leave in every single house, is I am obsessed with alpacas. They are just such happy creatures. I think that they are like, I could talk about them for like hours. I have a one of our projects, there's like an alpaca farm around the corner. And I'm like, okay, like when it's done, like I'm gonna have alpacas on your driveway. So we always leave like an alpaca figurine or like a little alpaca stuffy somewhere in the project. And that's kind of like one of our final parting gifts to our clients. That's from us, at least.
What a cool.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness. Jean Liu, to you.
Certainly nothing as interesting as an alpaca. I do think that we try to make sure we leave any space in a project with something textural. I think that really is that other sense and other dimension of giving someone something tactile, whether it was the mosaic in that kitchen floor, because it actually does have quite a bit of texture as you walk along it, or you see that through velvet on a piece of furniture. But I don't really ever want to walk away from a project and it looking or feeling flat.
Mm-hmm.
That's great advice. And Jean Stoffer.
Well, I think what we do is when we're done putting in all of the things that have been organized ahead of time for a project, we look at it and say, okay, what does it need? And there's usually one or two things or both. It needs something alive,
Mhm.
usually a plant of some kind, or it needs something old, like some patinaed antique, like an old brass bowl or something. So alive or old.
We're almost not alive, right?
Yeah.
Does a cactus work? Jean, like how alive does it have to be?
Yeah.
Okay, one last thing. So we're going to start to wind this down. I want everybody to look at this final page. Make sure that you're going online and you're following all of us on social media. This is where you're going to find all of these design nuggets. It's where you're going to stay connected to all of our favorite designers. And I also want you to know that you can discover more design inspiration by accessing Cambria Style Magazine through our blog and through cambriausa.com/style. This was absolutely incredible. I cannot wait for the next issue. I can't wait for the next webinar. Jean, and Ethan, you have all been delightful. And to the hundreds of you that tuned in for this webinar and asked questions, I hope that you enjoyed it. It was a wonderful, wonderful afternoon learning about all the designs. And I want to thank you designers so much. Thank you for being part of it. It was so wonderful.
Thank you. It was great.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Okay, and with that, we're signing off. Goodbye, everybody. Make sure that you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and continue to follow us at CambriaUSA.com. Until next time, we'll see you later.